Bellingham headed to Dortmund. Stop me if you've heard this before. Jobe Bellingham is headed to Borussia Dortmund in the Bundesliga, just like his brother did a few years ago, and that is something he has made a point of trying to avoid. So is this the right move for Jobe Bellingham? You can make a strong case on both sides, and we're going to do just that next here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub. So if you follow this channel or if you follow me on any of our content platforms, you know that usually I come in with an opinion. I have my facts lined up and I present my opinion, and you're probably not swaying me on it one way or the other. I'm here to argue one side. This is not one of those times. Sometimes I just like to have a discussion about something and I can see both sides of an argument. That's the case here with Jobe Bellingham going to Borussia Dortmund. I don't know if it's the right move for him. I get it, but I don't. I think there could have been other options. I think staying at Sunderland may have been one of them, but I also understand it, and we have to factor in and figure out how the shadow of his world-class brother fits into all this. So there's a lot to unpack here, and I can argue both sides, and fair warning, I'm probably going to contradict myself a lot here because I get both sides of it, but I would love to have your discussion. So if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below. Definitely get in the comment section on this video. I want to hear both sides. I want to hear the arguments because I get it. But get in those comments. Let me know your thoughts. You can also leave comments on Twitter and Blue Sky at Pitchside Pub, and check out the website pitchsidepub.com. So let me be very frank. It's hard to say a player made a wrong decision. A player has to make a decision for his career that he thinks is best, that is the best fit that he is comfortable with. And this does not always happen. A lot of times, especially these young players, are nudged, guided, very, very not so gently in some cases, into a particular destination because it's what's best for the agent. It's what makes them the most money. It's what makes the club the most money. The agent gets a big cut of that. Or they jump to a club too high for their next level of development simply because the payday is there. So, it's hard to say, oh, you're making a bad decision when we're on the outside and we don't know everything that goes into it. But you can see sometimes that a decision is bad right from the outset, and you go, oh, that's way too big of a club. He's going to struggle, or he's not going to get enough playing time, or that's too big of a jump in competition from this league to this league. Some of these things are easy to see from a distance. This is definitely not one of those cases. This is a case where I absolutely understand the move. And if Jobe Bellingham did not have a world-class older brother playing at Madrid who had already been at Borussia Dortmund, this would be a no-brainer because it is hard to argue against Borussia Dortmund as a finishing school, if you will. And that's what they have been known as for a long time, is, a finishing school for some of the best prospects in the world. Jobe's older brother Jude, Erling Haaland. The list is very long of these players who had made their name and as up-and-coming wonder kids, went to Dortmund, got a taste of big-time football. Bundesliga is good competition, and they are one of the bigger clubs in it year in and year out. They are typically in Europe, and not just in Europe, but typically in the Champions League. But they're willing to play young players, willing to get them that experience, and that has been a great stepping stone for a lot of young players who have then gone on to become some of the superstars in the game that we know today. So in a vacuum, in a bubble there, when you take out the brotherly factor, it makes a lot of sense, right? And it's hard to argue against that on its own merit. And Dortmund is a great place, and I'm sure he will have success there. So that alone makes you go, hey, this makes sense, right? Yeah, of course he left Sunderland and moved on to Borussia Dortmund. Totally logical, makes all the sense in the world. But we've got some of these external factors, and no matter how hard you try to ignore them, you simply can't. One is his brother. Jobe Bellingham has made a point of wanting to get out of his brother's shadow. And it doesn't feel like there's any animosity there. He just wants to be his own man, to the point where he actually doesn't wear Bellingham on the back of his shirt the way Jude does. He puts Jobe on the back of his shirt. And he's actually done interviews when they asked him about why he did this. It's because he wants to make his own name in the footballing world. I commend it. I applaud that. That's really great, particularly when your brother was so good, so young, and you get this player that comes along. He's a couple years younger, he looks exactly the same, he moves exactly the same, he plays a similar position, and only the nuanced viewer can really see the differences there, and the average fan is just going to go, oh, we got another Bellingham, oh, we don't need Jude Bellingham, we've got Bellingham at home, right? And that's not fair because of how good Jude is and how good he was at such a young age. So if he's going to have that natural comparison his entire career, it's almost going to be impossible for him to live up to it, and he can end up being a very, very talented player, but if he's not world class and at Real Madrid and starring for England, it's going to feel like somewhat of a disappointment. And those expectations have crippled better players than Jobe Bellingham. I will assure you of that right now. Those are wild expectations to have on such a young player. So for him to want to make his own name, and I don't think it's a minor detail that he puts Jobe on the back of his shirt. I think that's great. I think that's a major thing on the mental side of the game. So I think that's a great mentality for him to have, which is, hey, I love my brother, he's great, and I hope he has a great career, but I've got to do my own thing. I commend that, I applaud it. But then you follow him to Dortmund. And that's where you go, well, wait a second. If you are so dead set on making your own name, maybe don't go to the same place your brother did. Because there's already expectations of, well, they bought Jude Bellingham for this small fee, and then they sold him for this monstrous fee, and now we've got another one. Boy, we're going to cash in on another €100 million transfer in a couple years. Wow, those are tough expectations. If he doesn't become a €100 million player, he's somehow not living up to expectations. That's wild. And yet that's going to be a real thing if it's not already. And we've already seen a little bit of this in some of the media circles. So by going to Dortmund, he's sort of inviting back in those wild expectations. And that's really tough. Now, I'm sure I'm not telling Jobe Bellingham anything he doesn't already know. Not that he's going to see me or hear me anyway. But you have to wonder, for a guy who's worked so hard to avoid those expectations, why Dortmund of all places, right? And of course, it's probably for the reasons we talked about. They have a great history of developing young players, and his brother had a positive experience there. And you do that when you make these major life decisions. You rely on the people you trust in your inner circle. And so, I'm sure he calls up his brother, and his mother is very involved in their careers. And and Jude is going to say to Jobe, no better place than Dortmund. Great place, great fans, great developmental system. It's a great place for your career, and he's going to listen to his older brother. And that all makes sense till he gets there and they go, why aren't you as good as your brother? And that's what you have to hope the Dortmund fans don't do. And again, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. Dortmund fans are great fans, and hopefully they're smart enough to know that if he only becomes a €50 million player in a couple years, that's still a win, and he's still a very good player. That's a really good player. 50, 60 million in a couple years for a guy you're paying, 32 for right now. That would still be a win financially. Plus, that means he's turned into an upper echelon player. Look at the guys going for those amounts right now in this transfer window. So that's a win, but it would feel disappointing. But in addition to being a good place to develop, Dortmund has Champions League football, and that is something that I'm sure he wants, and he wants to experience, and he wants to actually play in. And so that is a draw that is tough to turn away from. Not to mention, when you are on a team with Champions League football, you tend to make more money, and then if they don't make the Champions League the next year, you take a little bit of a pay cut. But there's typically a bonus in salary when you are on a Champions League club because of the money that comes into that. So maybe that was a factor too. But that was probably one of the main reasons he felt like he needed to leave Sunderland. He wanted to get some European experience. Which brings me back to the real question, which is, why not just stay at Sunderland? And, had Sunderland not been promoted and was still in the championship, it's an obvious move. Jobe Bellingham is ready to play at a higher level than the English championship. He played as a regular on a very good team, and he had a very good season at that level, and he is ready for another test, for a higher level. But if he's looking to distinguish himself from his brother, you know what Jude Bellingham's never done? Played in the Premier League. Jobe could have stayed put and gotten Premier League experience and shown his mettle there against an even better level of competition than the Bundesliga. And he's already a key player on this team. He doesn't have to learn a new system. He doesn't have to learn a new coach. He doesn't have to learn all new teammates. He's going to stay where he is. He could have stayed where he was and tested himself at the highest level of football that not even his brother has had a chance to compete against. Jude Bellingham chose to go abroad, to go play in La Liga after the Bundesliga. So that would be a great way to distinguish himself. Is it a risk? Absolutely. because Sunderland is going to be in a relegation battle. From day one, they're going to be in a knockdown, drag-out fight. And we have seen over the past couple years, it is more difficult than ever for the promoted teams to stay up and not be relegated. And even if they do stay up, they're going to be in a battle. Sunderland is going to be in a knockdown, drag-out fight for every point they get the entire season. Now, we have seen young, star, up-and-coming players be able to prove themselves in those situations. Look no further than Liam Delap at Ipswich this past season. He parlayed his success there into a move to Chelsea, and his star is on the rise, as it should be, and his team was terrible. Ipswich was bad, he got no service, and yet he still managed to score 12 goals. He still managed to stand out in the crowd. Jobe Bellingham could do that. Now, is that harder to do as a midfielder? Yes, absolutely. You're not going to get the goal-scoring record. You're not going to have those easy stats to consume. So it's really the nuanced eye that would have to watch him. But it could be done. But is it a risk? Absolutely. So for me, I think the draw was the Champions League football. If you stay at Sunderland, yes, you get the Premier League, but you're not going to get Europe. You're going to get you got the domestic cups. You got plenty of football to go around. You would get to test yourself against the best competition in the world. And to me, the argument there would have been standing out from your brother. If that was really your goal, and I commend that for being a goal, but if that was really Jobe Bellingham's goal, he never would have gone to a club where his brother became a star, and he would have stayed in the Premier League with a team he already knows, and a coach he already knows, and a system he already knows, and played in the best league in the world that his brother has never stepped foot in. That is the move that would have been best for separating himself from his brother and getting himself out of his brother's shadow. But would it have been the best for his development? Going to Dortmund is probably better for his development. So it may have come down to that sort of question. What's best for me long term, and can I handle the pressure of being Jude's little brother? If that's the decision he made, I commend him for it. As much as I think it's wise to want to get out of his brother's shadow, it's not something he'll ever be able to completely do. So if he can just take it head on, and overcome it, that is certainly one way of handling it. Again, there's no way for me to decide a right or wrong. This is one of those cases where I get both sides, but I wanted to talk about the possibility of him having stayed at Sunderland and what that could have been. They are going to make an investment. They're going to be okay. They're going to fight. They're going to scrap. He could have proved himself in the Premier League, and had they been relegated, he would have probably had his pick of Big Six clubs the following year. And if not, he's the teenage Bellingham that's having success in the Premier League and was able to be a key role in helping keep Sunderland up. The only way that doesn't work is if the Premier League was too big of a jump for him specifically and he was sinking. Could that have happened? Possibly. Is the Bundesliga an easier jump from the Championship up a level? Absolutely. Champions League football's hit or miss. You get some star teams, you get some lower level teams, but jumping from the Championship to the Bundesliga will be a much easier jump than jumping from the Championship to being one of the worst teams in the Premier League. But his brother never did it, and that would have separated him. Is there a right or wrong here? I really don't think there is. Good for Jobe Bellingham, good for the Bellingham family, good for Borussia Dortmund, and good for Sunderland for cashing in big time on a young star. I hope they reinvest it into a couple pieces that help them stay up. But it wasn't the only option, and there were some other unique possibilities that I just wanted to discuss today, and I definitely want to hear your thoughts. So get down in that comment section. Let me know what you think about this entire decision, the whole Jobe Bellingham situation. Get in the comments. Let me know what you think. You can also leave comments on Twitter and Blue Sky at PitchsidePub. While you're at it, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel and check out the website, pitchsidepub.com. Thanks as always for joining us here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub.